Within the music industry, there are a lot of different cogs that kind of turn, and I want to map out all of those cogs today so that you get a better understanding about how the music industry works. By the end of this video, I will have a full drawing of how the music industry works. I'm going to talk about how all of the different cogs work and how each company within the music industry functions, and also how they relate in regards to other companies within the industry. So we're going to start quite basic, and we're going to start with you, the artist. There's not a great deal to talk about with the artist. It's the music maker, whoever's kind of producing the music. That's what I'm talking about when I say artist. The next is a band manager. Obviously, when you're first starting out, and most bands that are quite low level don't have a band manager, but what I'm going to be drawing out with this is kind of like the whole spectrum. There will be certain things that I draw out today that you will not have, and that is totally fine. I'm just giving you every single organisation that exists in the music industry and how they relate to each other. So the next logical one is a band manager. In theory, everything goes through a band manager. The artist is separate. The artist is doing its own thing, and if the artist wants to talk to anyone else, they go through the band manager. In regards to everything behind the scenes, the manager is the face of the band. You don't get to interact with the band if they have a manager, in theory. If a band has a manager and you want to get to the band, you talk to the manager, not the band. Next, we have the record label. A record label handles the releases. So when the artist creates the music, it goes to the record label and they will sort out the stuff to do with the music. What do they sort out? Okay, first, they go through a distributor. The distributor is the direct line to all online and sometimes physical platforms of which you can buy music. So this is the avenue that a band will go to get to the public in terms of streaming and downloads. So in terms of getting on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Deezer, SoundCloud, all of that stuff, in theory it will go through a label and then a distributor. There are certain exceptions like SoundCloud, where maybe a label will just put it on themselves because it's easier to do that. If the opportunity is there, then they will do it. That being said, any artists that are kind of going the DIY method may completely skip this section and just go through something like TuneCore. There are advantages and disadvantages of doing that, but in terms of a traditional standpoint, this is the method that would be taken. Another very key part of getting out there as a band is a plugger. A plugger will lead the charge in terms of contacting blogs, music TV like Kerrang, Scuzz, MTV Rocks, and getting in touch with radio to get plays. The plugger will almost entirely be hired by the label and will kind of only be in contact with the label. There are exceptions where a manager may be in contact with a plugger, but generally that's kind of the setup that it is. The last company that the label is directly in contact with traditionally is a publisher. The publisher is a company that will take care of royalties collected from the in the UK from the PRS. Those royalties will be anything from like gigs. If you ever play a gig, a certain amount of money from that gig will be sent to the PRS and is held for the bands. A publisher will be able to take that money, which will then be given to the label, which will be given to the manager, which will be given back to the artist. It's a very long-winded way about going around things, and I think if it was done today, it'd be done very, very differently, but that's how it works. You can also get royalties for any radio play that you will have if you get played on the radio. The radio station will give a certain amount of money to the PRS, which gives it to the publisher, which gives it to the label, which... The other big thing that a publisher will do is synchronizations. A brief overview of what a synchronization is if you have music and that music gets put into TV or film or games, that's synchronization. A publisher, part of their job is getting music that is sent to them and that they work with into TV and films and that side of stuff. That's what they do. So as much as a distributor and a plugger kind of work to get the band out there to the public, to everyday people, a publisher gets music and does the stuff behind the scenes. Everything that a publisher does is behind the scenes stuff. So we've talked about kind of where the music heads out and how it gets distributed and that side of stuff. The other side of being a band is playing gigs and live performance. That's where an agent would come in. There's a slight misconception among some bands that we talk to that kind of feel as though it should go artist, manager, label, agent. As in, it should be the label's direct job to sort out gigs and be part of the agent's thing, and traditionally that's not the case. In theory, a label and agent would work in parallel with each other as opposed to an extra step along the way. So what does an agent do? An agent is essentially just a gig getter, a festival finder, a tour provider. So an artist that normally has an agent tends to be on the higher tier of artists. Generally, an artist will get a label before they get an agent. That's not always the case, but it tends to be how it works because it's easier for a label to do their job with a lower level artist than it is for an agent to do their job with a lower level artist. And I say that because generally an agent won't just get gigs. Generally, an agent will get tours. They will get you a spot as a support on quite a big tour. That's kind of an enticing thing of being with an agent, is that you can now kind of get yourself on bigger tours that you wouldn't be able to do on your own. That is your way in, is through an agent. Yes, they can get pretty good festival opportunities, and yes, they can get you gigs, but it's kind of more common. It's kind of more common for you to get tours through an agent than anything else. So this, as a whole, is kind of how the music industry stands. There are 3 extra things that I want to talk about that don't really fit into this kind of diagram, so let's talk about those now. The first of the 3 is a social media team. They are kind of... It's hard to say because with every single artist it's completely different. Sometimes when it's a bigger artist, it will be maybe a manager and someone from the record label that runs the social media. That's not uncommon. Newer artists who are maybe people who already run social media anyway, and maybe when the band was smaller, they ran the social media all by themselves. Sometimes maybe an artist is part of the social media team, but that social media team is essentially the team that formulates the plans and the branding and everything that kind of goes into social media, because maybe when you're starting out a band, you just kind of think social media is a platform where you just kind of, if you're doing something, you show people on social media. But as you kind of evolve and you get all of these things in place, there is so much strategy that goes into social media that it requires a team of people to kind of pull it off and to do all the things needed to do. Which is kind of why I didn't want to put it in all the thing, and why it's not in capitals and all the other ones are, is because it's vague as to what the industry standard is for this, because there are so many different setups, and it doesn't really matter. Whatever works for the team of people that are working on it works. The second of the 3 extra parties that kind of in play in the music industry is a tour manager. A tour manager essentially sorts out the logistics and manages what will go on a tour. Sometimes there will be people that are hired in just for that job. Sometimes there will be people who work for the label. Sometimes maybe the people who work for the agent. Sometimes it will be the manager if they're good at tour managing anyway. It's worth knowing. You need to know these people exist because they are the thing that keeps a tour together. They are the people who are sorting out, okay, so we need to be at this place at this time for soundcheck at this thing, so we need to set off from this place at that thing, and we need to sleep over there because that's how long it takes to, and that kind of thing. It's all the nitty-gritty of tours that an artist is probably going to have no idea about. A manager's busy with other things because chances are the tour is coinciding with a release of something, so he's constantly doing shit with the label and stuff. Tour manager is hired in just to do one specific job, and in theory will do it well. The last thing I want to talk about is a branding consultant. I don't think there aren't all that many people that kind of say that their job title is that. There are some people that are maybe social media strategists, there are photographers, there are people who work at labels as A&R, there are band managers who will all kind of do this. And what it essentially is informing the team of people and working with the team of people that are working on a release or on social media or on branding as to what kind of needs to be done and inputting ideas and that kind of stuff. And you can get someone in, like a photographer, like a different A&R person, and you can kind of get them in and have them in the team just as a consultant that you can kind of talk about branding with. The best example I can give of this is a photographer. If you have a photographer that's got a really cool individual style or just has really original ideas, you can bring them in and have them work with the team when creating all of the branding, which happens quite early on in a release. They will be able to work with the manager and whatever the social media team consists of and they can kind of work together and make sure that the idea for the branding is something original and new, so then when they come to actually shoot the photos for the branding, it's something that's kind of cool and in tune with the rest of the brand. There's nothing worse than having an entire set of artworks and posters for the tour that's been set up and gig posters and all this kind of stuff that's all in one brand, and then you're getting a photographer that knows nothing about that branding, none of it's been released yet, that takes photos in a completely different style. If those two styles clash, you have kind of an inconsistent brand which ends up being just a bit naff. That is kind of how a branding consultant would work, I guess, for kind of lower to mid-level bands. But higher level bands, there would be people that I would consider branding consultants that are like McFly's hairstylists, or the people who choose what One Direction wear for music videos, that kind of thing, because there is a brand to adhere to. They have created this image for the band, especially like a band like One Direction or like pop bands that are really marketed towards teenagers. There is a specific brand that must be withheld, and there are people that are hired to keep that thing going. I'd call them a branding consultant. They probably go under different names and do slightly different things depending on the situation. A lot of this is kind of, it will be different depending on the situation. Certain labels maybe won't go through a plugger and will do plugin themselves. Some publishers are labels and will do both at the same time. I believe some distributors are labels and will distribute stuff for other people as well as running their own record label. This is the kind of basic overview, and if there's anyone who kind of works in the music industry that kind of has any more input on it, by all means write it as a comment, because this is kind of, we've been in the music industry for 3 years, just about 3 years, and this is what we've picked up. There's a chance that other people will have experienced different things, and please open up about it, because this isn't by no means a solidified, this is how everything works at all times, because everything's completely different all the time and different companies work in different ways. That's worth knowing. If you found this video because you're looking into getting into the music industry, yes, this is quite a good way of understanding kind of what parties are at play, but by no means is this the be-all and end-all of music. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you're going to come out of this video knowing a little bit more than you did when you came into it. If you have any questions about any of these people and kind of what they do, by all means, do a comment and we'll get back to you about it. We have done some videos before on record labels and band managers. I will link those up there if you want more details. If in the future we happen to do any videos on distributors, pluggers, publishers, anything like that, I will also link them up there. I'm limited to 5 links up there, but there should be 5 videos linked up there if you want to learn more about any of these things. I'll also link to some branding videos that we did if you're interested in branding. If you want to see more videos from this series, we have made a crap ton of videos about how to become a band. Click here and it'll take you there. If you want to see our best of videos, which is just from all the videos that we've made, all of the best ones, click over on that side of the screen. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you have a good day. I'll see you later.